years, and together we have 3 kids, Christian, Trinity, and Ava. About 9 to 10 years ago, I saw something on Pinterest that talked about how after the Israelites crossed the Jordan River on dry ground, they put up stones of remembrance so that they would remember God's faithfulness in this moment. And when their children and grandchildren asked what the stones were for, they could explain how God had seen them in their time of need and delivered them from their enemies. That's from Joshua 4:1-7. And I remember taking a whole package of smooth stones from the Dollar Tree and then a black Sharpie and writing specific instances of remembrance when the Lord was so personal and faithful to me in my life. I want you to know up front, this story isn't told for sympathy. I'm not standing here to make anyone feel sorry for me. I'm just sharing because I want you to remember, and I want to remember as well all that God has brought me through in the last 2.5 years. Psalm 77:11-12 says, I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will consider all your works and meditate on all your mighty deeds. It was the beginning of May, and we had just had 2 more weeks of school. I was teaching Bible, art, and dual credit at Trinity Christian Academy. It was Sunday night, and I was in bed, and I remember I was freezing, and I had a big comforter on top of another comforter, and I was still freezing. I had to use the restroom, so I got up, and as I started to pee, I started hurting so bad from my belly button around my stomach to my back, and the pain was just getting worse and worse. So I immediately started to get sick to my stomach. I'm freezing, and I'm hurting terribly. So I start to run me some hot bath water, thinking, well, this will help the pain, but it didn't. And I continued to vomit all of my bath water. I then started calling for Brad, who's been asleep up until this point. I don't know why they say sleep like a baby. I mean, babies wake up easily, but a husband, they can sleep through almost anything. I tell him there's something very wrong and that I'm hurting so bad and it's making me sick to my stomach and I can't quit vomiting. And I don't know if I can even make it to the car, but I know I need to go to the minor ER. He sees me, laid out in the tub, exhausted, vomit floating all around me, looks at me and says, well, that's a bit dramatic, don't you think? Y'all, if looks could kill, he died 3 times in that instant. I suddenly reverted back to when I was in labor with Christian, and I woke him up because he's supposed to be timing my contractions. He wrote down 11:43. Then I woke him up a little while later, and he goes, 1:51. I raised my voice and said, no, it's not. It's 11:51. And you better wake up and get this time right before we have this baby at home. Now, in his defense, I woke him up from a deep, deep sleep. And he doesn't function well when you wake him up suddenly. He goes and gets the puke bowl and then goes to get me clothes. I let out my nasty water and tried to bathe a little best I could before he helped me dry off and put on clothes. I throw on my red Violet United Way t-shirt and my bright red and black buffalo plaid pajama pants that he got, because to men, clothes are clothes. It doesn't matter if they match or not, or that it's May and those were Christmas PJ pockets. I asked for clothes and he delivered, so off we went to Quality ER at 4 a.m. We pulled up to the sliding doors that open, and I'm moving at a snail's pace, hunched over my bowl, as I'm vomiting uncontrollably due to the pain. Some thoughtful person had put a chair right inside the doors, and I made it there. I think they got a wheelchair and brought me back to the minor emergency room after that. Praise God, they gave me nausea meds and pain meds shortly after I got there. After a scan of my abdomen, it was determined that I had a mass. Side note, we had almost the same exact scenario happen in June of 2022, and I went to Medical City McKinney by ambulance, where the doctor pumped me full of fluids and told me I just had food poisoning and sent me home, despite the other ER nurse saying I had a blockage and the medical team at Quality saying I had a blockage. This time though, I could be admitted quicker at Medical City Plano, so that's where I went by ambulance. Once I arrived at the ER, a new scan was done that showed a large mass around my stomach area. I then was transferred to a bed on the oncology floor. Next, I had to have a cystogram and was told that they would do a biopsy as well later that day. On Tuesday, I got to shower, and my nurse Haley was so sweet to offer to French braid my hair. Because of how my IVs were, I wasn't able to do this myself. I remember vividly how this simple act made me feel seen, not as a patient, but as a person. I didn't run any more fever that day. I want to say that they were giving me antibiotics, pain meds, and nausea meds through my IV. That Thursday, Brad's boss, who was also a preacher, stopped by with the sweetest card. He also brought me a She Reads Truth Bible, which I secretly had been wanting for about a year, and a yearly women's devotional. He said that he was in Mardell telling a lady about my situation, and another lady heard them, and all three stopped right there in the middle of the store and prayed for me by name. Y'all, this brought on the tears. Then later, I read the devotional for that day. Y'all, I can't tell you how much I needed to be reminded in that moment about how God is still El Roi, the God who sees me. Mm-hmm. The devotional for that day said, man, God is always right on time, even in the hard and unexpected times. This was definitely an unexpected time for me and my family, and I had no idea that hard times were just around the corner. Biopsy results came back late that day, and Dr. Buck came by and talked with us. There was a 2-inch by 3-inch by 5-inch gastrointestinal stromal tumor, or a GIST for short, causing pressure and blockage to the intestines. It was in a location that affected the bladder, colon, and intestines, and this was something that needed to be surgically removed. The problem is scheduling 3 different surgeons that would be needed to do the surgery. I needed a gastrointestinal doctor, a urologist, and a gynecologist. This would be a longer surgery depending on what they found. They may have to remove reproductive system too to get room to work on the tumor. And we were told if surgery does not happen quickly, and I started getting sick, a surgery to install a colostomy bag would take place, and I would have to take a special pill for up to 3 months to shrink the tumor and then have the surgery to put everything back together. After we received this news, we called Brother Mike, I believe on a Thursday night, and I asked him to please pray for our kids as we were going to have to explain that I have cancer. I was doing pretty good until I could tell Brother Mike was fighting back tears. And then I started crying. Even though he was having health issues of his own, which we did not know at the time, he still called and prayed with us. We also called Justin and Jamie Thompson so they could pray, and also we could ask Jamie to explain some things to us so we could better understand and we could ask any questions because she's a nurse. And she was so good to explain everything to us. And she told us that if I had to have cancer, this would be the type of cancer to have because it's not as aggressive as other types of cancers. My kids came up on Saturday, and Brad told them I had cancer. He doesn't build up to it. He just rips the Band-Aid off and exposes the hard truth. Christian had just graduated from PJC and was starting a new job on Monday. Trinity was the family manager, and Ava, I think, sometimes tried to be the voice of reason when the older two didn't see eye to eye. I had a PICC line put in the next day, and they also started me on TPN, which were nutrients given through my IV, since I was barely eating. I was still in a lot of pain, especially from hour 3 to 4, waiting on my next dose of Dilaudid. I asked my day nurse how they knew if I was still getting rid of all of the fluid that they were pumping into me, since we haven't measured my output in a few days, because at that time I was really hurting. So she checked my bladder and it was very full, and she said she could give me a catheter since I would need one during surgery anyway. I agreed, and right when I got that, it was instant relief. I had over a liter of fluid in my bladder, and that's why I had been hurting so bad. I learned to quit trying to be tough and to speak up. I had surgery on Friday, May 19th at 8 a.m., and I got out of surgery around 3. They said it went well, and they were able to get off the tumor, and even though it was attached to my colon, intestine, and bladder, they had to cut a little of my bladder to get the tumor, as it had tried to stick to other parts of my body as well. I also had a full hysterectomy. Y'all, this tumor ended up being the size of a football.
Oh my gosh.
My husband sent everyone home because the surgery had went well, and my friends and family had gotten there so early. There was nothing more to do but wait for the anesthesia to wear off. Brad then waited, and waited some more. The infectious disease doctor that came by one time when I was first admitted came to the hospital room, and he had hit it off with Brad. He was probably 6'2", and since Brad couldn't pronounce his name, and he really liked him, he was given a nickname, and he referred to him as Top Shelf, because he could probably reach the items at Walmart that were on the top shelf. Anyway, he came by just to check and see how I was doing since he was walking by, and Brad told him that he didn't know because I hadn't woke up yet. The doctor asked how long had I been out of surgery, and Brad said that it had been several hours, but that some other nurses had taken me for a CT scan earlier, but he didn't know why, and he hadn't been told anything. At that time, Top Shelf logged onto a computer and began to read to himself audibly, but kind of under his breath, and Brad heard the word stroke. Then the doctor got on the phone, called someone, and Brad said quickly the room was teeming with doctors and nurses, and he was pushed out of the room. He was later told that a doctor had ordered a CT since I wouldn't open my eyes. There was also a shift change before the results were in, so I guess I just kind of fell through the cracks. It was later determined that I had a PFO, which is a hole in your heart that usually closes on its own after birth, but mine did not close, so the blood clots then went to my brain and caused 2 strokes. One on the left side of my brain stem, which affected the right side of my body, and another on my occipital lobe, which affected my eyelids, eyeballs, and vision. Every morning at 5 a.m., they would draw my blood, and I also had to get vitamin K shots in my stomach each morning. At some point after surgery, I had pulled my NG tube out, and I was just sitting there holding it, just so proud of myself. I later pulled out my PICC line too. I was not in my right mind. I guess I was a bit of a mess. And the sweet phlebotomist came in that morning and said, "Good morning, friend. I've got to draw some blood." And I immediately snapped back, "You are not my friend." Brad was so embarrassed and he had to get on to me. But honestly, I don't remember anything that happened in those 2 weeks. I was having some crazy dreams that I truly felt were really real. I honestly thought I was just waking up from my surgery and I was just too sleepy to open my eyes. Until Brad told me about my strokes, and that's why I couldn't see. It was definitely an adjustment. He was so sweet though to adjust my pillow, turn the lights on and off, close the blinds, etc. After all of this, I started losing blood and they weren't really sure why. So I wouldn't be allowed to eat for a couple days in case they had to do another scope. Then they would decide if I could have just liquids, and then I would do well with those liquids, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna get to eat the next day. No, they changed their minds again. They also couldn't make up their minds where to put me, so we changed rooms like 5 times. Each time, Brad would have to pack up all of our things, and he also bathed in a public restroom some days with a wet wipe because we didn't have a shower in my ICU room. I don't know how many times he would unplug my monitors and help me to the restroom, but there are nights I got up every 2 hours when I was in my own room. Since we changed rooms so often, it was hard for me to get my bearings with my eyelids not working. I was also on a walker at this point, which made it difficult with my IVs and such. Even if I held one eyelid open, I couldn't read the time, the remote, or my phone. So if Brad had to leave to go to get more clothes or go to work for a few hours, I would get very anxious. And he made sure that I was never alone. and arranged for different family and friends to come stay with me. Cassidy and Trinity came and washed my hair and did my nails. Cassidy was so good to take my girls to Target and get clothes and snacks for youth camp too. Cassidy came in and wanted to play me some music, and Brad told her I really liked worship music, but no, in true Cassidy style, she played shoot. She later confessed she cried all morning to praise music and just needed something upbeat so she wouldn't cry in front of Trinity. Brad said he would often play Honey in the Rock, and that I would lift my hands and praise the Lord as I listened. I remember one day Brad was able to take me by a wheelchair outside. Y'all, that was literally the best feeling. I had to wear dark glasses because my eyes were so sensitive to light, but man, being outdoors was therapeutic to my soul. The doctors did say sometimes the intestines just repair themselves, and praise God, that's what had happened. That's where all the bleeding was coming from. No more scopes and no more bleeding. Finally, I would be going to Paris to an inpatient rehab at the hospital. And before I left, though, there was a therapist that did therapy on eyelids by using a TENS unit on the outsides of the eye. Since the other therapists there hadn't seen this before, probably 7 to 10 therapists were in there watching, as my eyes would twitch each time the unit shocked the nerves of my eyes. I felt like a human lab rat. We made it to Paris, and everyone there was so sweet. They explained that I would have 3 hours of therapy a day, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and physical therapy. The nurse also told me they would be taking my eyelids open for 5 to 10 minutes, one eye at a time, and that we would also use the TENS unit on my eyelids in the hopes that they could eventually open. Y'all, I had been through so much and didn't eat for so long that I lost 25 to 30 pounds. I definitely gained that back times 2, but I had lost so much weight that my family had to go buy me all new clothes. The only thing that fit was socks and shoes. I had been there for a few days, and they were worried that I hadn't had a bowel movement in several days. I knew I was barely eating, so I wasn't too concerned, but they tried to give me every laxative and stool softener known to man right before therapy. Thankfully, my mother-in-law spoke up and said, "Do you really think that's a good idea to give her that right before she does 3 hours of therapy?" So they agreed to come back once I was done. Beth, I will be forever grateful for that. I saw one poor man laying on the mat exercising when he sat up and he got a worried look on his face and then asked to go to the restroom. I wasn't going down like that. I did well on all my therapy, and I did my time. I remember playing matching games with one eye taped open during occupational therapy. I would have to wear a large belt that looked like a weightlifting belt, and the therapist would steady me from behind while I focused on walking without running into anyone or anything during physical therapy. I felt like Pinocchio when he was a puppet on strings. After these strokes, I feel like I've been over a handle of a baseball bat with a handle on my forehead and spun around 20 times and then tried to run. Coordination and balance are not in my wheelhouse. I finally got to go home after 40 days in the hospital, including my inpatient therapy. I don't know who was happier, my little Shih Tzu, Brad, who slept on a cot or a recliner all that time, or myself. We were so excited that we got up at 6:30 a.m., got all our stuff loaded, and headed out. When I had my strokes, it caused my right eyeball to sort of float up. If you've ever seen the movie Sing, picture Miss Crawley, the iguana with the crazy eye that falls out and rolls across the floor. My right eye just kind of did its own thing. I eventually saw a neuro-ophthalmologist. Well, actually, I saw 3, and ended up having 5 eye surgeries, 3 on my eyelids and 2 on my right eyeball to bring it down in the lining. And each time I had surgery, my vision was different. Now I see double since my brain interprets the images differently. We tried glasses with prisms, but that didn't help. And my husband later came up with the idea of a patch or a blackout contact so that I would only see one image. I really didn't want to look like a pirate, so after we found out that there really were blackout contacts, we ordered 2, and immediately I just saw one image. I now have a contact I can wear on my left eye for distance, but I can't see up close if I have that in. Since my eyeballs don't move or track, I can't do bifocals, so most of the time I just wear my blackout contact. However, my cancer medicine makes my vision blurry, and in here it looks like the lights have rays like the sun that cut through all of you. It's just very strange. I also have trouble with depth perception, but I can see so much better than before. I used to not be able to read, see faces, or even tell who was in my driveway. Little things like online shopping have helped me so much because in person, I can't tell what's on the bottom shelves unless I sit on the floor and look because my eyeballs don't even move where I can look at them. I also have to be right in front of an item to see it since my eyeballs can't move. You know, kind of like a man when they ask, can you help me find so-and-so? I get off balance super easy since my strokes, but I'm kind of thankful that I've been clumsy my whole entire life. So when I run into the wall, I just laugh it off and go on. So many people have helped during all of this by providing gift cards for our kids or just anonymously paying for a meal for them. Some dropped off laundry detergent, paper towels, toilet paper, paper plates, etc., which I do appreciate that gentle reminder for our kids to do the laundry and dishes while we were in the hospital. Our neighbor mowed our 2-acre yard out of the kindness of his heart. We had people that weren't even super close to us that Venmo'd us money, which helped so much with gas, eating out, doctor's visits, etc. Oh, and the prayers and tremendous support from my church family and friends. I have a couple of friends that are in their own health battles now, and we often check on each other, pray for each other, and encourage each other. I have one more year of being on this targeted drug that seeks out cyst cells and shrinks them if there are any signs. So far, all of my scans have not shown any signs of cancer. Amen. I know that God has been with me every step of my journey. This has led me to reconciling with my mom after 10 years. My mother-in-law and I are much closer than we were, and it has brought Brad and I even closer. It makes me really happy that we were able to leave our 3 kids home alone for 40 days and everything got taken care of. This will forever be one of my stories of remembrance that reminds me of God's faithfulness in my life. In the words of Corrie ten Boom, never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. Amen. Lamentations 3:22-23 says, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Amen.